It started as a vibration, a simple haptic buzz in pockets across Tokyo, London, Buenos Aires, and Madrid. Then, it became a sound, a cascade of chimes, pings, and notification alerts that seemed to synchronize globally, rolling across time zones like a digital tsunami. At exactly 6 o'clock in the evening, Greenwich Mean Time, the server load on YouTube spiked to levels usually reserved for global emergencies or heavyweight title fights. But this wasn't a crisis, and it wasn't a boxing match, although, in a way, it was the final round of the greatest duel in sporting history. The notification was simple, almost deceptively understated. It read, "My new guest needs no introduction." But it was the thumbnail that froze the world. For a few seconds, the collective consciousness of the internet refused to process the visual data. Millions of thumbs hovered over screens, paralyzed by skepticism. We live in an era of deep fakes, of artificial intelligence, of hyper-realistic edits that blur the line between reality and fantasy. Surely, this was just another fan-made edit. Surely, this was a clickbait title designed to harvest views before the inevitable disappointment of a generic vlog. The image showed a familiar studio setup, the dark, moody walls of the Cristiano set, the golden YouTube play button gleaming in the background, the carefully placed memorabilia. But sitting on the caramel-colored leather sofa, wearing a simple black t-shirt and jeans, looking relaxed and perhaps a little amused, was Lionel Messi. Twitter, or X, was the first domino to fall. The hashtag Ronaldo Messi podcast didn't just trend. It occupied the top 10 spots instantly, displacing geopolitics, weather disasters, and celebrity gossip. WhatsApp groups that hadn't been active since the 2022 World Cup suddenly lit up with screenshots and frantic typing. The sheer cognitive dissonance of seeing them together, not as rivals on a pitch separated by club colors and tension, but as two men sharing a coffee table, was too much to comprehend. For 15 years, the world had been locked in a binary argument. You were either Team Messi or Team Ronaldo. You chose the artist or the machine, the natural genius or the product of relentless hard work. We built walls between them, constructing a narrative of animosity that fueled the biggest rivalry sports had ever seen. And yet, here was the notification that shattered that narrative in a single frame. As users finally clicked the link, holding their breath, the view count ticker on YouTube began to malfunction. It froze at the archaic views limit, unable to keep up with the millions flooding the gateway every second. The video didn't start with a flashy intro or loud music. It opened with silence. A wide shot of the studio. The lighting was warm, intimate, stripping away the stadium floodlights we were used to seeing them under. On the left, Cristiano, dressed in crisp white, his posture upright, his energy electric, that familiar grin stretching across his face. On the right, Leo, slumped slightly in that characteristic, unassuming way, hands clasped, a shy smile playing on his lips. The silence lasted for 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity, a heavy, historical pause that acknowledged the weight of the moment. Then, Cristiano leaned into the microphone. His voice, usually booming with the command of a captain, was softer, laced with a genuine, almost boyish excitement. He looked at the camera, then turned his head to the left, and let out a laugh, a real, unscripted laugh of disbelief. He said the words that no sports commentator, no pundit, and no fan ever thought they would hear in a casual setting. "Welcome, my friend." The camera cut to Messi. There was no hostility. There was no icy glare. The Argentine looked up, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and simply nodded, leaning toward his own mic to reply, "Hola, Chris." That was the moment the simulation broke. Mainstream media outlets, from CNN to the BBC, interrupted their regular broadcasting. This wasn't just sports news. This was a cultural singularity. Anchors were scrambling to get live feeds of a YouTube video, analyzing the body language, the seating arrangement, even the water bottles on the table. In the first 10 minutes of the upload, the video had already surpassed the 24-hour viewership records of major movie trailers. It was the realization that we were witnessing the end of an era, intimately. We were flies on the wall in the Olympus of football. The comments section moved so fast it became a blur of unreadable text, a waterfall of flags from every nation on Earth, united by the sheer absurdity of the visual. The skepticism regarding AI vanished the moment they started moving. The micro-expressions were too human, the awkwardness too palpable. There was a tension, yes, but it wasn't the tension of hatred. It was the tension of two kings who had spent a lifetime ruling separate empires, finally meeting in the neutral ground of a recording studio. You could see the realization hitting them both. that they were the only two people on the planet who truly understood what the other had endured. The pressure, the expectations, the adoration, and the criticism. As the video played on, the world stopped working. Productivity in offices plummeted. Schools paused lessons. Commuters missed their stops. For the first time in history, the entire globe was glued to a conversation between two men who, for the better part of 2 decades, had let their feet do the talking. The glitch in the matrix was real, and the broadcast had just begun. The wheels of the Gulfstream G650 kissed the scorching tarmac of King Khalid International Airport with a grace that belied the monumental weight of its passenger. It was mid-afternoon in Riyadh, the sun hanging high and fierce, bleaching the desert sky into a pale, blinding white. Usually, the arrival of Lionel Messi anywhere on the planet triggers a security nightmare. Thousands of fans swarming terminal gates, chanting his name, climbing fences just to catch a glimpse of the little magician. But this time, the tarmac was eerily empty. This was a ghost flight. No flight trackers had flagged it. The tail number was blocked, the manifest classified. The operation to get the Argentine captain into the heart of Cristiano Ronaldo's new kingdom had been planned with the precision of a state visit. Or perhaps a covert military extraction as the jet engines wind down to a low hum. A convoy of 4 matte black SUVs idled near the hangar, their engines running, air conditioning blasting against the relentless Arabian heat. The door of the plane opened, and for a moment, the heat wave struck the figure stepping out. Messi adjusted his sunglasses, descending the stairs with a backpack slung over one shoulder, looking less like a football deity and more like a weary traveler. There was no entourage of agents, no family, no cameras, just him. He was greeted not by dignitaries, but by Ricardo Reguilf, Ronaldo's longtime friend and manager, who offered a firm handshake and a quick ushering into the back seat of the second vehicle. The door thudded shut, sealing out the noise and the heat, cocooning him in silence. The drive through Riyadh was surreal. Through the heavily tinted bulletproof glass, the city moved in its usual rhythm. Construction cranes punctuated the skyline, luxury cars weaved through traffic, and billboards of Cristiano Ronaldo, wearing the yellow and blue of Al Nassr, loomed over the highways like a watchful protector. Messi watched these images of his rival pass by, a silent observer in enemy territory. For years, the narrative had been that they couldn't exist in the same space without friction, that their gravitational pulls were too strong, too opposing. Yet here he was, being driven through the streets that Ronaldo now called home, passing the stadiums where the Portuguese star was writing his final chapters. The air inside the car was thick, not with awkwardness, but with the heavy realization of what was about to happen. The driver didn't speak. The security detail checked their earpieces. The destination was a private compound, a fortress of privacy where the UR Cristiano studio had been built. Inside that compound, the atmosphere was vibrating with a different kind of intensity. Cristiano Ronaldo is known for his obsessive preparation, whether it's for a Champions League final or a recovery ice bath. And today was no different. He had been in the studio since early morning. He checked the lighting himself, adjusting the warm lamps to ensure they didn't cast harsh shadows. He moved the microphones a millimeter to the left, then a millimeter to the right. He wasn't wearing his match kit or a training vest. He was in a crisp white shirt, looking every bit the media mogul he was becoming. But if you looked closely, you could see the telltale signs of adrenaline. He was pacing. He was checking his watch every 30 seconds. He was drinking water, then putting the bottle down, then picking it up again. This wasn't just a guest. This was the only man in history who could look him in the eye and say, "I know what it takes." When the convoy finally crunched over the gravel driveway of the compound, the studio team went silent. The sound engineer, usually chatty, put his headphones around his neck and stood up. The camera operators locked their focus. The production crew held their breath. It felt less like a podcast recording and more like a summit between two nuclear powers. The car door opened, and the Riyadh heat rushed in again, followed by the small, bearded figure of the World Cup champion. He walked toward the studio entrance, his gait relaxed, unhurried. Ronaldo was waiting at the door. There was a moment, just before they made contact, where time seemed to warp. The staff present described it later as a physical pressure in the room. You had the two greatest statistical anomalies in the history of sport standing 3 feet apart. There were no cameras rolling yet. This was the raw, unpolished reality. Ronaldo stepped forward, breaking the barrier. He didn't offer a formal handshake. He went in for a hug, a genuine embrace that involved a pat on the back, the kind of greeting shared by war veterans who fought on opposite sides but respected the combat. Leo, Ronaldo said, his voice dropping an octave, stripping away the public persona. Welcome to my home. Messi smiled, that shy, guarded smile loosening into something warmer. Gracias, Cristiano, he replied quietly. They walked into the studio together, side by side. The juxtaposition was jarring visually. Ronaldo, tall, imposing, broadcasting energy outward. Messi, compact, reserved, drawing energy inward. As they approached the set, the famous leather couches, the memorabilia of Ronaldo's career surrounding them, Messi paused to look at a replica of the Ballon d'Or on a shelf. He glanced at it, then at Ronaldo, and a silent look passed between them. A look that communicated 15 years of battles, of stolen trophies, of broken records. There was no need for words. The history was screaming in the silence. They took their seats. The technicians scrambled to clip the lavalier microphones onto their shirts. Ronaldo took a deep breath, sitting up straight, engaging his core, switching into host mode. Messi settled back, getting comfortable, crossing his legs. The director raised his hand, counting down with his fingers. 5, 4, 3, 2. The red light on the camera turned on. The air in the room was electric, volatile, and heavy with the promise of truth. They were finally here. The red tally light atop camera 2 blinked into existence. A crimson eye staring down the two most famous men on the planet. For a fleeting second, Cristiano Ronaldo, a man who has lived his entire adult life in front of a lens, hesitated. It was imperceptible to the casual viewer, a micro-stutter in his breathing, but for those who have analyzed his every step over in celebration for 2 decades, it was a scream. He adjusted his collar, flashed that blinding, media-trained smile, and leaned into the microphone. Welcome back to You Are Cristiano, he began, his voice booming with its usual bravado. And today is not a normal day. Today, the internet breaks. He gestured to his left, his hand open, palm up, an offering. The man who made me run faster, sleep less, and work harder.
Lionel Messi.
There was no applause track, no cheering, just the hum of the air conditioning and the weight of the moment. Messi looked at the camera, then at Cristiano and offered a small, almost shy wave. Hola, he said softly, his voice a stark contrast to Ronaldo's projected baritone. Hello, everyone. The first 30 seconds were a masterclass in human awkwardness. You could see the years of manufactured rivalry sitting between them like a physical object on the coffee table. Ronaldo reached for his water bottle, a reflex he's famous for, and noticed the gourd sitting in front of Messi. A silver bombilla straw stuck out of the green herbs. You brought the mate, Ronaldo said, pointing at it, a genuine smirk breaking through his presenter persona. I told them to get you water, but you brought the tea. Messi chuckled, his shoulders dropping an inch as the tension broke. He tapped the cup. It is fuel, Cristiano, like your water, but with more. He paused, searching for the English word, before settling on Spanish.
Más alma.
More soul. Ronaldo laughed, a loud, clapping laugh that echoed off the studio walls. Soul. I like that. Maybe that is why you run less but see more. It was a jab, but it was wrapped in velvet. The kind of joke only a peer could make. Messi didn't flinch, he just smiled, taking a sip. And you run enough for both of us? He shot back, his delivery deadpan. For the next few minutes, the script, if there ever was one, was abandoned. They didn't talk about trophies or goals immediately. They talked about their children. They talked about the weather in Manchester versus the weather in Miami. But the audience wasn't listening to the words. They were watching the dance. Body language experts would spend the next week dissecting this footage. Ronaldo sat forward, elbows on his knees, dominating the space, the alpha wolf ensuring the pack was secure. Messi sat back, legs crossed, deeper in the sofa, the quiet observer who controlled the tempo without moving. It was the same dynamic we had seen on the pitch for 15 years. The unstoppable force and the immovable object, now reduced to two fathers sharing a conversation. You know, Cristiano said, leaning back suddenly, looking at the ceiling as if admitting a secret to the gods. My son,
Cristiano Junior.
He watches your videos. The room went dead silent. Messi's eyebrows raised. He tries to do what you do. The dribbling, the left foot. Ronaldo looked back at Messi, his eyes intense, vulnerable. I tell him, Chris, you are right-footed. Play like your father. But he says, no, Papa. Messi is different. Messi looked down at his hands, a genuine flush of color hitting his cheeks. It was the first time we saw the armor crack on the Argentine. He wasn't the god of football in that moment. He was just a man being complimented by his greatest adversary. My kids. Messi started, his voice quiet. They do the Sue. They jump on the sofa and do it. Ronaldo roared with laughter, slamming his hand on the armrest.
No.
You are joking. I am serious. Messi smiled. Thiago does it when he scores in the garden. He looks at me to see if I am angry. And are you? Ronaldo asked, leaning in. Messi shook his head.
No.
It is a good celebration. The ice didn't just break. It shattered. In that exchange, the decade of media-fueled animosity evaporated. They weren't enemies. They were two sides of the same coin, two men who had shaped the childhoods of millions, including their own children. As the laughter died down, a new gravity settled in the room. The pleasantries were over. Ronaldo shifted in his seat, his face hardening slightly, the journalist in him taking over. He looked Messi dead in the eye. So, he said, the word hanging in the air, let's talk about Spain. This was just the beginning of a conversation that will go down in history. The full breakdown of their tactical discussion and the shocking revelation about the 2018 Golden Ball is coming up next. You are watching history unfold right here on World Sports News WSN. If you don't want to miss the next chapter of this legendary meeting, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you're the first to know when the next update drops. We are WSN, where the game never sleeps.